I'm telling you guys, like, I may have to have y'all back on in the fall because Alabama just passed the whole you can ship alcohol to the house, but it comes into effect in fall. So I've actually contacted a lot of other cideries and distilleries that I wanted to have a podcast with, just so I could be like, let me get your alcohol then, because free on-camera samples are where it's at, and I want to take advantage of that.
I didn't know that was a rule in Alabama. You can't ship it to the house at all.
No.
Wow.
I don't think we can do like medicine through the mail either. It's weird. Like, it's real weird.
Interesting.
You know, it's funny. I don't know if you want to weave it into your podcast a little bit. You know, we border on Pennsylvania, and I don't know when, but it was just fairly recently that they changed their laws, which were very restrictive, and it was actually pretty good for the local wineries and cideries there, because it was very difficult for other, businesses to get into the state. So they kind of had a monopoly there, and I remember that very distinctly, that like the cideries and wineries, that there weren't a lot of cideries. This was years ago, wineries, but the wineries did great because there were so few options that everything was sold through a state liquor store. So it drove a lot of business for the wineries when they started opening.
Okay. Yeah, because like I remember coming, and we'll just start the podcast right now, and as soon as I finish this, we'll just go ahead and y'all can introduce yourselves. But I went up to Boston recently within the summer, last summer, and I was like kind of taken aback when I realized that they didn't allow people to buy alcohol in Walmart. Like, you had to go to the actual liquor stores themselves, which I found a slight annoyance, but at the same time, I was kind of into that because, like, why does Walmart need any more of my money? All right. Well, hey, welcome guys to the episode. It's great to have you on. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
We are
the Naked Flock.
We are
in Warwick, New York. My name is Dylan.
And Johnathan.
All right. So Naked Flock, that's an interesting brand name. Is that the name of your farm as well, or your orchard?
No, it's Applewood Winery is the primary business, and that was founded way back in 1995.
Okay.
Before.
It's been so long you can't even remember.
And we started off making hard cider right off the bat, and sold it here in our tasting room, and was doing well with it for years and years. And then after a while, cider started taking off more, and my son Dylan was graduating Cornell University around that time also, and a lot of people
and said, "Hey, I need a salesman for this cider."
Yeah, people were saying, you need to get out there and distribute the cider. So, and I said we need to come up with a new name just for the brand itself. And I started thinking about different ideas to call it, and cider was still very new at that time, even back in 2012.
2012, yeah.
And so we're kind of looking, cider's an old thing, but it's new. So I got this idea from a winery up in Canada to take kind of like old ideas and rehash them and make them new again. And there was this place in Canada called the Blasted Church Winery. And they had this idea from a folklore story that happened in the town where they went to move a church one day. And this was back in the 1800s or something like that. And they moved it, not by picking it up, but by taking it apart and putting it back together again.
Okay.
Well, they didn't want to take all the time to pull out all the nails and all that stuff. So what they would do is they would light a stick of dynamite, they throw it into the church or structure or whatever they're doing, they close the door, and they'd run like hell, and supposedly they give just enough blast that it would literally loosen everything in the damn place apart. Well, apparently the story was that they went a little overboard with the TNT, and the church was blown to smithereens. And so they decided to call this the winery, the Blasted Church Winery, after hearing the story that happened in the town years ago. And,
That is epic. Holy shit, that is fantastic.
And of course, they approached the church and said, "Do you mind if we call it the Blasted Church?" And they're like, "No, we don't want to be called the Blasted Church." So they didn't have the blessing of the church, but it made for a great name.
I honestly wouldn't care. That's just good enough a name to not really care. That, like, with the backstory, like the Blasted Church, it's kind of cool, it's kind of metal, but the backstory is just what yokel thought is like, oh, I'm just going to calculate the precise measurements for a TNT blast. It's like, oh, I moved the decimal that way instead of it's like, what idiot thought he had that shit.
Well, so anyway, the local folklore backstory to the naked flock, and this supposedly it's true. I think most of it's true, but
It's probably a little exaggerated of the story,
but all the original characters have long since passed away. But I picked this up from our local paper, which posted the story back in the 1950s, but it occurred back in the 1860s at some time. And there was a local pastor who was really good friends with an author named Herman Melville, who was the author of Moby Dick, as you know.
Mm-hmm.
And, Melville was a guy who traveled the world, even in those days. And he was good friends with this pastor, and he brought back to him all these seeds from the Orient to plant in the pastor's garden so that his wife could have these beautiful poppy flowers growing in the garden.
Oh no.
Well,
yeah. I know what's up.
They were those kind of poppies. And they made these beautiful flowers, and the pastor's geese broke into the garden one day and ate all of the poppies. Well,
they got a little.
They became so stoned that everybody thought they were dead because they were like incapacitated.
Mm-hmm.
And this being that period of time, the down was very valuable. So they went and they plucked all the feathers and down off of the geese.
Mm-hmm.
And a couple hours later, the geese woke up.
That's wild.
Started staggering around the town in a drunken stupor. And all of a sudden, all the church ladies in the local town saw this, and they're like, you got to do something about this.
Oh, this is scandalous. We have naked geese.
Indecency. They're showing their ankles.
This is blasphemy. So
you can see the geese private parts.
So they said, you got to kill these geese. And the pastor said, I don't know about this. And the pastor's kids came up and said, Daddy, no. And they made the little petticoats for the geese and put them on there. And the church leader is still like, you got to kill these geese. And the pastor said, no, I'm going to defend my naked flock.
That is hysterical.
Really?
I think that beats the church story. It's close. I mean, heroin geese or TNT church. That's really hard to put up against each other.
And we kind of liked it too, just because it was a lot of fun, just to come up with the name and stuff. And
it's a fun story. People always laugh when they hear the story.
And we like the symbolism of it too. That helps us with the, marketing our cider, talking about it being, stripped bare, naked, pure, nothing to hide. Our typical ingredients list is, less than a dozen words, and
Way less than a dozen.
it just,
He's like, hold on now. That's too many words now. Shit. We're getting a little crazy.
But yeah, all of our ciders, we don't use any kind of artificial flavorings or added sugar or anything like that. It's as natural as it can be.
Yeah, and normally that kind of especially down here, a lot of people will like try that. They're like, oh no, I don't want foods with any artificial anything or preservatives. But the second they get something like that, they're so used to these like sugar, salt, and starch rich foods that they're like, oh, this is so dull. And I'm like, this is what you asked for. This is the good stuff. You've just killed your palate. You've OD'd your palate, and it can't taste anything unless it's like 90% concentrate.
Hey, what do you think? We just came up with a new tagline: as natural as it
can be.
Natural as it can be.
I
I love it.
I was going to say we get a lot of that up here too, though. That actually makes me think of what you always used to say about the wine business, is that people like to talk dry but buy sweet.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been plenty of times where I've been so I work as our salesman, so I'm out pitching the local restaurants and bars and whatnot, and somebody will say, well, what's your driest cider? And I'll pour them the same. No, that's too dry. Okay, well, this one's a little sweeter. Still too dry. Work our way up to the sweetest cider that we have. That one. That's the one.
Yeah. I remember my friend said he went to Sweden on a cruise ship with a friend of his that had terminal cancer. And when he went up there, like the sodas and the juices that they had were so just, they almost had no flavor or to them. Even my wife, she's originally from Vietnam. When she came over here, she would have to water down her Coca-Cola, like half Coke, half water, because they have a chemical in Coke that keeps you from vomiting, because your body's natural reaction to that much sugar is to get rid of it.
Oh yeah, I know. When you're sick, you drink some Coca-Cola. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no, it's almost an instant just gag reflex. So they apparently have this like anti-vomiting chemical or whatever. But yeah, no, for the longest time, she would always do like half and half. She'd give me the other half of the can and just like mix it. I'm like, whoa, like, what are you doing? We'd go to McDonald's, she'd get half sweet, half unsweet. I'm like, this is undrinkable. This is an abomination.
Well, let's not talk about overly sweet ciders, because that would make me very angry.
Yeah. So what, as someone who doesn't really like, who almost has cider at its more or less natural sweet level, what is that in comparison to, let's say, like Angry Orchard, Reds, or Strongbow? How does that compare? Are they overly sweet, or are they around the same amount?
Yeah, no, those are all overly sweet ciders. Yeah,
we're not supposed to disparage bad ciders here. Well, I shouldn't.
We don't like to trash talk other cider companies, but
I mean, it's not trash talk. They're either sweeter than you or they're not.
Very sugary, overly sweet ciders for the most part. I mean, I know a few of them have some drier options, but I mean, your average 12-ounce serving of Angry Orchard, I think is going to run you like 33 grams of sugar or so.
Oh,
nice. I think our draft cider comes in at about 5 to 7.
5 grams. I'm low key kind of glad I didn't get to drink it on the podcast, because all we have down here is Angry Orchard. Like, that's it. We don't have any like natural, we don't have any cideries down here. I mean, it's probably, I don't think we get enough cold weather for the orchards, but even so, like maybe they like ship them down from the mountains in Tennessee or something, but we don't have any kind of like, I think it's all distilleries down here.
Oh yeah, I've heard of a couple of good cider companies based in Tennessee, so they should migrate down the way eventually, get some new cideries down there. It's still a growing across the country.
Yeah. Well, I think the thing is they would probably have to ship the apples down to Alabama. I don't think it gets cold enough for, because I think they need like 19 days under a certain temperature, I think it is.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, no, we don't get that. Like, we don't get that. Like, I think Christmas Day, it was like 70 degrees.
Ooh. Yeah, well, actually, I was going to say
It's wild.
Christmas in New Orleans a couple of years ago, and it was
yeah. So you about where it's at. Yeah.
a little warm.
Wild.
Yeah. But are we allowed to go on rants on your podcast?
Oh, absolutely. Look, this is your episode.
Don't tell them that's okay. Don't tell them.
Look, I've said this about 3 times, for like whoever listens to this and like hears this, they're gonna get tired of it. But I had a stained glass artist on, and it was supposed to be about stained glass because he did a couple of Pokemon things on his TikTok, and I really liked that. I was like, oh, that's cool. And we went from talking about stained glass to communist ideals and like theology and like just discussion. I'm like, okay, cool. This is what the podcast has turned into. So yes, rant about whatever. Like, I'll try to like steer it back because I'm genuinely interested in your cidery and just cidery in general.
We'll talk about cider, but it's going to be a rant.
Run it.
Talking about being natural and everything. And like, for instance, I'll pick up a can of our cider here, and it says naturally gluten-free ingredients: apple juice, yeast, ginger juice, lemon juice. That's it. This is our lemon ginger cider. Okay, you pick up a lot of cans of cider these days, and the list has an ingredient: hard cider. I'm like, what? Okay. I mean, like,
how is hard cider an ingredient?
Yeah, how is hard cider an ingredient in hard cider? And this is government doublespeak that for some reason the Tax and Trade Bureau, which is always saying we're so in defense of keeping everything open and transparent to the customer, allows all these big commercial cideries to totally get around the fact that they're adding all kinds of artificial flavorings and doing all kinds of things to their cider and just putting it under the moniker of hard cider. And it basically means they can add concentrate, they can add essences, they can add flavorings, all kinds of things that are not cider, and they call it cider. And that ticks me off because I think that's so misleading because, I mean, for me, knowing the business, I picked that up and I'm like, oh, geez, this means it's made with concentrate from China or someplace like that.
Yeah.
And not the real apple juice in there, that they can kind of hide that in there. So, and that's what all the big cider brands do to make it super cheap, is they're using concentrate and watering it down and adding alcohol and adding, natural flavorings. It's like, I don't know exactly how this works, but apparently, like if you put some banana in water and boil it, you can get just about any flavor you want out of it. And there's companies that sell these flavorings and they'll say natural flavors.
Yeah.
There ain't nothing natural about it at all,
Yeah. Technically, it comes from nature. I think there was a time, probably like in the late 90s, early 2000s. That was like back when they were adding like steroids to chickens. It's just like now they're like, we'll never do that again. We're sorry. Apparently, they had crushed up red beetle exoskeletons that made a really like tantalizing red dye. And they use that as like a natural. Yeah. So it's wild because like I think even soap nowadays, like body soap, like you see like Dr. Squatch soap, they like Head and Shoulders is technically classified as a synthetic detergent and like not like soap. Apparently that's like a different classification. So yeah, it's really weird how all these companies get like these weird, we're natural, but we're not cider or soap.
It's hell.
Right. They said that's a lot. Like a lot of people, like they'll like start balding early because the soap is so just like over time, just like constantly using it. It's not harmful. Like getting a X-ray at the dentist isn't going to kill you, but that technician operating 7 or 8 X-rays a day for 40 years, that's probably going to give them a third arm.
They got to watch out. Yeah.
I got to tell you, I'm a fatso. The camera makes me look thin. And I've been reading about diets, and they keep saying, you know, the poison is in the dosage. It's like, just all kinds of things are good for you in small doses, but
right.
It's just like alcohol. Hey, a little bit of
only in
booze every day is good for you, but you drink a lot of it every single day, and you'll be in trouble before you know it.
Right. So how did you so you started this brand, you said it was in 1994 that was the cidery or the orchard itself?
That was the winery. The orchard itself has been owned by my family since the 1950s.
Wow.
And I kind of moved away. Like, we're about an hour north of New York City, and I went to college down in the city for a few years, and kind of went down there and was like the prodigal son, and somehow discovered that the nightlife of New York City was more interesting than the hills up in the Appalachian country here, and left for about a dozen years. But after that, I was kind of like, I kind of missed the country life. And one day I was reading, of all things, the New York Times, and read a story about a lawyer from Brooklyn who moved up to Vermont and started a cider company. And they said, oh, I know a guy who owns an apple orchard, being my father. And they said, that's how I could move back up there and get back on the farm and have some fun and do something enjoyable. And the lawyer was named Joseph Cerneglia, and the cidery was called Woodchuck Cider. And I think actually at the time it was called the Vermont Cider Company. And
I think that still is technically the name of the company.
Yeah, I think if you look on the Woodchuck, Incorporated.
Woodchuck was just the most successful brand they came up with, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So, and that was kind of the original inspiration to, open up a cidery. And my wife was in the restaurant business. She worked at a famous restaurant called Windows on the World atop the World Trade Center years ago. And so I was like, if I drag you like Green Acres back up to the country, will you be my Zsa Zsa Gabor and run a winery and cidery with me? And she said, hell no. But after, true Green Acres style, I dragged her up here, and now she loves it. And now actually she's the boss, and I just, make the cider.
Yeah, it's weird. Like, even being from Alabama, when we went to New York City during that trip to Boston, it was weird. Like, because I've always been like kind of faster paced, not really like completely like pedal to the metal all the time. But like when I walk down the mall, like, people from the South traditionally are slower moving just because there's no real sense of urgency on average. But when I went to New York City, like, people will just full on hauling, and it took me off my balance for a minute. But once I got there, like the overstimulation was actually like, I was like, I don't think I want to leave here. This is awesome. Cause like I'm
just find a town.
Right. Because like I've always kind of complained that people are so slow here, like 65 miles an hour for the road. It's like, if I'm not going at least 80, then like I'm going too slow. Like 65 is like slow. Like, we can't be doing this. Like, we got to be moving. And then you'll see a couple other people that are like, yeah, no, I have to be on my way. But you got some people that are like, 40 miles an hour down the road in a 65. And I'm like, no, I need to get from behind you.
It's like if we're like an hour and a half to 2 hours north of Manhattan, and you don't need a GPS or a map.
Mm-hmm.
You just get on the road, you start heading south, and you find the car on the road that's driving faster than anybody else and weaving in and out of traffic.
Follow that guy.
And you just, and they'll take you straight to Manhattan.
That's kind of where it's at, because like to be out in the country enough to where you can actually have a cidery and an orchard and be within an hour and a half of one of the most cities in the world, that's kind of where to be. That's like that's kind of where it's at, like, really.
Yeah, great location. We get a ton of our customers coming up here looking for a way to get out of the city for a minute.
Yeah, exactly. I can imagine a bunch of vacation homes, bunch of hedge funds trader vacation homes up around that area.
Yeah, exactly. People who live in Manhattan and spend all their lives there and barely get to leave the island, they go an hour north of the city and they say, "Oh, look, we're in the boonies. This is the country." Where it's like, to us, way more rural than this. Don't go any further.
Right. Man, that's got to be really good, because like all the business from the city, and then just being like, we need to like never leave our small little town. I mean, because what's the population of your town, if you know it?
It's about 40,000.
Okay, so that's about the size. That's about Dothan. That's more or less Dothan. So that's not bad at all.
Yeah, Warwick is a fairly big town for upstate New York.
It's actually land-wise one of the larger towns in New York State.
Yeah, well, it covers a lot of
land. It's
not
crowded,
but it's not crowded.
Okay, that's actually really good.
40 miles across. Yeah.
How many?
Almost 40. Yeah.
That can't be right.
Yeah, from the wetlands of Pine Island over by Port Jervis all the way over to Chester. Yeah.
I don't think that's 40 miles.
Well, I don't know, maybe 20.
Maybe 20.
Maybe 20. It's like 40 miles is that's a distance right there.
It's not.
I wish I was from Texas. I think big.
So yeah, especially with that freeze they just got done having, they might be able to have a couple of orchards themselves.
Oh yeah, Texas is real bad. In fact, my wife was just talking to me. She has a friend who lives in the hill country of Texas, and I think it's called Spring Hill or something, where there's a lot of
something like that.
wineries in Texas, and she was saying she wants to go visit there, and I'm like, well, there might not be any wine this year. And
no, I think I just read an article about France losing like a third of its like a couple of its orchards just because they were freezing so bad.
Yeah, I heard that too. Yeah,
I couldn't even imagine. That must have been wild. But so what made your family originally start the orchard?
Oh God, my dad started it, and he was a bit of an odd bird in that when he was like about 13, 14 years old, he just said, "I want to be an apple farmer," and he my grandfather was a well-to-do physician in a suburb just north of the city, and he told this to his father, and he said, I'll buy you this farm." And of course, this was back in the 1950s. Land was dirt cheap up here. And he bought an orchard, and it wasn't an orchard, excuse me, it was just a dairy farm, and planted apples, and he started up the business here years ago, called it Applewood Orchards after he stole that name after a place that he went and worked for a summer somewhere out in Michigan. And that's how, the farm started. And, it started as a pick your own, it started as a traditional kind of apple operation, and then switched to pick your own apple. in the 1970s and 80s. And then, so that brought a lot of people to the orchard, and that's how I got the idea years later to come up with, doing a winery and making apple wine and cider here, because there was a ready-made market here already with all these
Exactly.
people from New York City. So it was a great fit, and it's worked out well over the years. And sometimes in the beginning it was almost a little bit hard to work against, because people would say, "Oh, Applewood Winery, they only open during apple season." I was like, "No, we're open year round." We had to work against that kind of thing for years, but eventually people got it. And like just I think 2019 was the first year that we were open year round, actually. So we're open 12 months a year now.
And then you had COVID slam your doors shut real quick.
Yeah.
Only temporarily, thankfully. We've been
Okay.
strong since we've been able to reopen.
Yeah.
Oh, good. So they kind of let the more rural areas reopen. Because, like, I think even California, like some of their more rural areas up in the north, like some of them are like, hey, we're just a small town and nobody really comes here. So we don't really need to be like shut down like Los Angeles. So I'm glad that they let like smaller rural areas like y'all do like the same thing. Because I would have figured like the whole state was just shut down.
New York City was really bad. Just everything was shut down. But they let us, starting I think last June is when they let us open outdoors only.
Okay, that's really good, actually.
Yeah, and thankfully we have a lot of outdoor space. So I mean, all these capacity restrictions.
Oh yeah, you're literally on a farm.
Didn't really affect us too much. We just moved the tables a little further apart, but it's like we got them just out in a big field next to the building here. Yep. And we said, okay, have as many people as tables that we have.
Exactly.
Getting people to stay in their seats and not run around without their masks on, coughing on each other.
And I know I've spoken to so many winery owners and distilleries and breweries around here, and everybody around here kind of says the same thing. Is it kind of made us really take a step back and look at our businesses and kind of reevaluate everything. And in a lot of ways, a lot of people say it's been good for our businesses because we focused on, what made us money, what brought people to us, what enticed people, what they liked about us, and really kind of refocus on those things.
Yeah, you really had to trim the fat in a condition like COVID.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that's what happened. And I mean, it was scary. Both of us now we're all vaccinated, and just about everybody on my staff is now. But believe me, it worried the hell out of me. I had a meeting here last March with my staff, and I told them, I said, you work here, you're probably going to get this at some point, because it was spreading so fast. And
that's in March when we had no idea what it was. We didn't know if it killed 10%, 2%, nobody. We didn't know what was happening.
Yeah, that was the scariest time early on, when you had no idea what was happening.
I mean, especially with New York City, back when the Spanish flu came around, I think New York was one of the hardest hit areas since it was such a transportation hub.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. So fortunately, we've had a few employees get sick, but none actually on the job.
Oh, that's good.
And nobody seriously at all. We actually just had one employee got sick last week, actually.
Oh, wow.
A younger guy who hasn't gotten vaccinated yet, but very mild, and he's fine. We're glad to hear that. So, it's been a tough year, but we came through it and kind of focused on things that we're really looking forward to this year, and kind of expanding on what we focused on.
Yeah, and a lot of the changes that we made because of COVID, we kind of like the way that we're doing things now, and we're trying to figure out a way that we can keep doing them as things start to reopen more.
We almost have what they call it, FONO, fear of normal. Because we've changed it and adapted so much, and we feel like we've really adapted to the situation. Like, geez, things go back to normal, we're gonna have to adapt all over again.
Yeah, I even know, like, my wife has gotten vaccinated, and like because I still haven't, just because I didn't want it to really interfere with my work. So I wanted to make sure I could get an appointment on a Friday. But apparently, a lot of other people had that idea as well. So it's backed up for Fridays for like a month or so.
Really?
Which, I mean, at least that many in Alabama are getting vaccinated in the first place. So that, I mean, I can't really complain there. But when she got vaccinated, like, she still walks into Walmart with a mask, and I'm like, babe, like 40% of the population's not wearing a mask, vaccinated or not. You're good. Like, what are you still doing? She's like, I keep forgetting. Like, it just feels normal. And I'm like, yeah, I guess we're just gonna have to like readjust to not wearing a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It would be like having a car that's like, it does not matter how hard you wreck this car, you're staying in your seat. You're magnetically locked into the seat. And people would be like, where are the seatbelts? How am I supposed to drive without a seatbelt? And it's just like, no, there's not been a seatbelt preventable death in like 10 years. What are you doing?
Well, it's gotten to be so commonplace that you leave the house now, you check your pockets, okay, phone, wallet, keys, mask.
Yeah, exactly. I've literally, like, I do that. I'm like, phone, wallet, keys, and then I'm like, masker in the car. Like, I have to remind myself, especially in the beginning, because like I think because originally Walmart was like, you have to wear a mask in stores, and then about a month and a half in, all the crazy Southern people started like screaming about their freedoms. So like Walmart's like, never mind, we don't need you to wear masks, and since we are not going to be offering them either. So like, there's been plenty of times where I just forget and be like, oh, Walmart will have a mask for me. Like, no, we don't do that anymore, but you can buy one. I'm like, I'm just go back to my car, get a mask. So like, especially now, like y'all talking about you like trimming the fat for your business. There's a lot of other people, especially ones that I know and see on YouTube and TikTok, where they've really like just dove in and have started their own businesses. Like, it's really crazy how quickly people have just like decided a 9 to 5 is not necessarily permanent. Like, it's like a W-2 has always been seen as the most secure. You'll always have a paycheck, but working for yourself, you'll work 80 hours a week for the same amount of pay as a 9 to 5.
I wouldn't know about that.
But like, even now, like, I think I just seen an article where my current workplace is looking to hire like 280 people, and like the 3 or 4 McDonald's that are in the city in the city of Dothan, like they themselves are looking to hire 200 people. And people have, whether it be from receiving unemployment for a year or starting their own businesses throughout the year, using that unemployment and stimulus checks as the seed money, that's not right. Like the $12 or the minimum or the $7.25, $7.50, that shit's just not cutting it anymore. Have y'all found anything similar to that, or does your work?
Oh yeah,
there's definitely an employment shortage crisis.
Yeah, we're getting busier and busier right now, and we're running into a huge problem in hiring people. And kind of what we've done to adapt to it is that we've got
made me do everything.
Well, that's part of it.
You are the son. That is kind of your responsibility.
Then we have the people who are actually working with the customers, who are quote adults. You got to be at least 18, obviously, in New York to serve. And so what we're doing is we've been hiring an army of high school kids to do everything else in the background. So that it kind of frees up the people who are working with the customers to do nothing but that, so that they're spending all their time dealing directly with them. I mean, basically now we are kind of operating almost as a restaurant, in that people come and they sit down to do a wine tasting. They don't stand up at a bar, and we don't go back to that actually. And people are sitting down, and we bring them a flight of wine. And we've got these beautiful flight trees that we put the glasses on and everything.
Yes.
So basically now the servers are only going up and taking the orders and talking to the customers, And then we've got the kids, you know, clearing the tables, bringing out you know, cleaning everything and
Bringing out
taking
food.
care of everything. Yeah.
Yeah, basically a back of house staff as we slowly become more and more like an actual restaurant instead of just a wine tasting room.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Like, I mean, in all honesty, like, I'm very interested to see where this kind of like late stage capitalism-esque, like, people are like, I don't think I really want to work for like barely livable wages anymore. Like, I wonder how, like, because like I think I've heard like rumors of my place starting to offer like a $2 an hour bonus if you show up to work every day of the week. Like, I mean, now of course they wouldn't just offer to pay us more. They're just going to be like, come to work and we'll give you more. And this is like a chicken processing plant. So, I mean, these guys make money. So it's not like a restaurant or something. And it's and doubling down on restaurants, like, I don't know how it is in New York or anything, but at least in Alabama, I think it's $2.50 an hour, and then on top of tips.
We couldn't get high school kids even to do that.
Exactly. Oh no, they're expecting like a single mother with 3 children to come into work for $2 an hour, and then tips.
Plus tips.
Yeah, plus tip. I'm like, that's not gonna fly anymore.
Well, that's like we were talking about the Chatham Bars Inn recently. There's we go on a vacation every year up to Cape Cod in Massachusetts, and there's this like really fancy hotel restaurant called the Chatham Bars Inn, and somebody saw on their Facebook recently that they were practically begging for people to come work for them, saying you could make $2,000 a week working here.
Yeah.
Like, when they say that, do you mean you will make $2,000 a week, or you can if you get tipped well?
Yeah, exactly.
And
like
course,
even yeah, go ahead.
They say you make $2,000 a week and then you can spend a night there.
Exactly. Right. Oh, exactly. Like even at my place, they have this giant banner and rentable digital billboard. It's like, come work here and make $16.70 an hour. And it's like, no, that's maintenance wages. Our wage is $12. That's all the positions that they need. They don't need any more maintenance people. Who are you lying to?
Oh, jeez.
Well, it's kind of interesting you're talking about this, because one of the things talking about refocusing everything is we kind of look upon our online sales as like a separate business these days. In fact, you know, while we were starting to you know, get ready for the podcast, we were having discussions about all these things we never really paid much attention to with e-commerce and our website and everything, and really looking at you know, who exactly is buying our cider and wine online, and
you know, all these analytics and demographics, and it's where we're learning all of this stuff as we go and teaching ourselves.
You almost are going to need a social media consultant or somebody to like look at your numbers and stuff.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we're discussing.
We're trying to fill that position ourselves right now, debating if it's worth it to pay someone to do that for us.
Right, absolutely. Have y'all also, because I mean, also because YouTube has really like grown like exponentially, like especially over 2020. And in all honesty, I don't know if y'all ever heard of a book or a movie called Ready Player One?
Oh yeah,
sure.
Yeah. I've read
Okay.
that.
Yeah. So I mean, because if you know or not, you'll know in a second. Facebook owns the Oculus Corporation, so like, and I'm sure that they'll somehow be able to port over the YouTube app for like however Google and Facebook decide to make that deal happen. So I mean, it's only, and that's even if you don't have like AR glasses in a couple of years or whatever. So I mean, digital content is only going to grow up more. That being said, have y'all thought of having like kind of like a daily or weekly vlog series, kind of like how our mutual friends, the Three Guys and Cider, kind of do?
That's a great segue,
God.
actually. Is, we have been doing this Facebook Live show, actually, since the pandemic started.
Okay.
We're going to be coming back this Saturday, actually, after a short little break. You're not going to be airing this podcast for a little while, or?
That used to be the case. I used to have to go to work, wait an hour and a half for it to download because I've horrible internet right here. But however Zoom works, the file just downloads within 30 minutes at the same and or a little bit better quality. I can edit it the same night and then upload it as I go to sleep. So for the past 2 or 3 episodes, I've just been having them sit in the drafts for like a week and a half. But in all honesty, I can probably just upload this Monday.
Well, perfect. Well, this Saturday at 6 p.m., we're going to be coming back after a little bit of a break with our Facebook Live show. But we'll be doing it every Saturday for at least the rest of May before we take another short break. But yeah, it kind of started at the very beginning of the pandemic. We'd never done this before. And it's me and my mom who do the show. We just mixed up some cocktails and just talked out into the Facebook void just to give people something to do and to feel like they were at some kind of a social gathering again and not locked up in their homes. But it's become very popular because a lot of people are watching it. And we always talk about a different wine or cider of the week. And sometimes we're making cocktails. Sometimes we're tasting food and pairing it with the wines. It's a little bit of kind of the flavor of the week. But to the YouTube point, we need to get better about actually uploading those to YouTube as well.
Yeah, we have a couple of videos, but we really haven't focused on that yet. And that's a big thing we need to do because I know personally I'm a huge consumer of YouTube videos. It's like I almost don't Google things anymore. I just go directly.
Oh, absolutely.
Because I think I'm basically dyslexic and I can't read something for more than 2 minutes.
Oh yeah, no, that's definitely happened. Like I remember my serpentine belt on my car broke and I was so scared, but I typed into YouTube how to change a serpentine belt on a 2013 Nissan Juke and there was like 20 videos.
Yeah.
I was like, am I going to get one video? Maybe it'll have it for the Nissan Versa. But no, it had the exact year. And like, it was like, there was 2013, 14, and 15. It's all the same thing, but just the different year of the car, just for whatever reason.
Just so you know.
Yeah.
And each video had like 20,000 views. I was like, holy shit.
Video, how to drink a lemon ginger cider.
Right.
First, you open the can, pour the can into your mouth.
I mean, honestly, like there are people like that buy cameras at Best Buy, buy like $1,500 cameras at Best Buy, and then make a 10-minute video comparing that one and its competitor, and then they return both of them and then rake in like 40,000 views.
Yeah.
Like the internet is wild. Like, but in all honesty, like as a cidery, like as you said, it's popular and getting more popular. Like going out and just being like, how do you know an apple is perfect for making cider? Like a 5-minute YouTube video, I'm sure y'all would pull in plenty of views. Like, what's the best way to mix cider? Make cider. Like you could do a whole. Like I know people that just do it in their backyard.
It's all for YouTube.
Yeah, you looking for a job?
Dude, don't give me hope. I'll move. Don't give me hope.
No, but we pay good though. Instead of $2 an hour plus tips, it's $3 an hour plus tips.
All the cider you can drink.
That's $20 an hour by itself. I don't know.
It's funny. I remember this woman who was working for us years ago. Said the primary benefit of working here was the obligatory glass of wine at the end of the day.
Look, my family used to run moonshine, so that's what we're used to drinking. You don't want to give me copious amounts of cider.
Well, if you drink moonshine, it won't bother you.
No.
Like water.
Oh yeah, no, that's a vitamin at this point.
Oh God, I got a horrible story to tell you.
Go
We were
for
talking
it.
about hiring kids before, and this was a few years ago, and I hired this kid, and I dabble sometimes in making what they call pommeau, which is a cider that's blended with apple juice and distillate, cider
Uh-huh.
that's been distilled. So at this particular point in time, I had a large jug of, well, actually several gallon jugs of this distillate that was like 180 proof or something like
Ooh,
that.
there it
And
is.
I had this kid working for me. Um, this kid all of a sudden didn't show up to work the next day. Uh, we found out that he wound up in the hospital,
Oh
and,
no.
and turns out one of my employees came up to me and said, one of those jugs is missing from that shelf that was up above there.
Oh no.
And supposedly the kid wound up in the hospital because of dehydration. I'm like, oh yeah, ooh, he stole that. He got fired immediately, but
Oh yeah,
yeah, you got to be,
that's unfortunate.
yeah.
At least it like what year was this? Because it sounds like it was a pretty decent because like you still own your farm. So I assume it was like 10, 15 years back. Because if that happened today, they would be like, they let my son steal their stuff and he almost
Yeah,
died.
exactly.
Yeah.
The kid steals something, they'd say, you let him do it.
I broke into your store and broke my leg because the lights were turned off. I'm suing.
Yeah, you're right. You should have been an attorney.
You're giving me all these career options. I just want to be a podcaster.
I agree with you. That's a safe profession.
Yeah, it's just so. What does it really go? What really goes into making a gallon, 2 gallons, or a batch of cider? What does that really all entail? Because I've seen so many different ways of doing it. People either taking it in cheesecloth and crushing it under a screw twist, or throwing it in a food processor and letting the juice leak out. What really goes into making cider, or at least how y'all do it?
Well, I'll tell you, it takes a hell of a lot more than 2 apples per can.
Oh yeah, I saw that. I was like, that's bullshit. There's no way because I can just go buy 12
Two
apples.
apples
Like,
per can. That's like,
I can't believe that.
that's like about a shot glass full of,
I
apples.
was like, wait, so I can go to Walmart, buy 12 apples, and make a 6 pack of green apple cider? That doesn't seem right.
No, no. Well, I didn't how shall I say? I don't want to get too technical here, but
Oh, I don't
well,
want you giving away your secrets. No.
no, I don't mind giving away secrets. And in fact, that's one of the things I like about the cider business. It's kind of funny. I live a dual life as a winemaker and a cider maker. And it's funny because cider is more tuned into the craft beverage movement with breweries and distilleries and et cetera. And it's a much more open environment, and people are much more willing to share. Um, like for instance, we make a mead, and I never had any idea how to make a mead until I talked to a bunch of mead makers online and in person and forums and such. But if you want to talk about wine, nobody wants to tell you how they do it exactly. They'll tell you all kinds of stories because there's just this attitude in the wine world of like, I have a secret. I have this special process that we use that they don't want to share. So that's one thing I really like about the cider business. And in fact, I was talking to a winemaker about this a couple of years ago, and he looks at me and he shakes his head and he says, these cider makers have all the fun. The same we winemakers don't get to do anything. But I hate to say it, but it's a really simple process. In fact, the more natural and you make it, the simpler it is. Trying to get it consistently in that simple flavor profile is kind of the trick
Mhm.
where it gets difficult. But we focus on making the wine itself. So we actually buy our juice from other local orchards because they have all the equipment and everything for pressing everything. The other thing is my father planted apples for a pick your own apple orchard, and they're all kind of varieties that don't really work with cider as well.
Okay.
So I get all the orchards, and I have to kind of scour the local orchards because looking for things like Crispin and Ida Reds and these kind of obscure varieties that nobody grows. And in fact, one orchard described it to me. He says, "Well, those are varieties that somebody's grandfather planted and their father ripped out."
Oh
Kind of thing.
no.
So it's hard to get, and in fact, we don't even make like real, quote, traditional cider varieties because they're just not available to us, unfortunately, here in the Hudson Valley. A handful of orchards do have them, and they keep them all for themselves.
Yeah.
Basically.
No, of course they do.
It's dark out here now, but sitting behind me out in the driveway, I got 4 275-gallon totes of cider that I just got from one of the local orchards, and it's
He's like, I'm coming over.
yeah.
Right.
Well, it's not for me. Don't get excited.
I should have met y'all at the beginning of the pandemic when a flight to New York from Atlanta was like $40. Now it's like 500. They're trying to make their money back.
Woo, jeez.
Yeah, no, it's kind of wild.
So we just got the juice now. Part of what I do is I'll take one of those. They're in these. They call them totes, and they look horrible. They're like these big plastic tanks with a metal cage.
Yes,
But they're
we
great.
have actually plenty of those down here. A lot of people get 2 of them, cut them in half, and use them as showers for their hunting cabins. So I know exactly what you're talking about.
That sort of thing. Yeah, yeah. But I'll take one of those, and we'll put that through. I have a cross-flow filter, it's called, and it'll take that juice. I mean, you know what cider looks like normally. It's cloudy, kind of brown looking, and we'll put it through this cross-flow filter, and it'll end up kind of looking like what's in this glass right now, which is like apple juice. And then what I have a cooler out back. It's an old shipping container, and we insulated it and hooked up a cooling unit to it, and we'll put it in there and chill it down, and then we'll take the rest of that and ferment it. And then just before we bottle it, or can it, excuse me, we'll take back about 10% of that in juice and mix it in with the fermented cider. And that's how we get the natural sweetness and kind of roundness of flavor of what we're making with our ciders.
Okay.
So that's how we get the natural sweetness and flavor in there without adding sugar to it and all that kind of stuff.
Man, so how long does that process take? Because the way you're explaining it, I don't know if it's just how much you have done it, but that sounds like it takes like a week.
well, the actual fermentation with cider is one of the advantages of being a cider maker as opposed to wine maker is that we can ferment a batch of cider and sweeten it with that juice I was just talking about, and filter it and can it all in the space of a month.
Okay, that's not bad at all. No, it's not bad.
Yeah,
at all.
and the reason is because of the nature of cider and the juice in it, the acids in it are stable, whereas wine is not stable acids, and it has to be cold stabilized. It takes 3 to 6 months at least for those acids to stabilize. So it takes a lot longer for wine. So it's one of the advantages is like with cider, we can turn we'll make close to 20,000 gallons of cider a year, but we only need 1,000 or 2 of gallons of tanks for that because we can turn them over every single month. Whereas if we were a winery, you'd have to have 20,000 gallons worth of tanks and
Right.
what they call and a huge capital investment that takes and everything.
Yeah, that's a lot of upfront stuff. That is wild. So what does so I like how y'all have your I like how you have like the non-plastic rings on your cider cans. Is that something that is that required by New York, or is that a conscious decision? What is really kind of just how that, like, and the regulations? I'm also really interested in stuff like that. Is like the cidery business like overly regulated? Because I talked to a friend in Britain, Sam Meadmaker, where he had to go through like a special licensing thing as a cider maker to make the mead that he's trying to produce.
Well, it's a highly regulated business, period. I joke, we were talking about career changes before. I used to be in the insurance business full time, and it was only about a dozen or so years ago I started doing this full time. And I tell people I got out of the insurance business because I absolutely hated paperwork. Well, guess what? I spend about 20% of my time now, every single day, is doing paperwork, But yeah, part of our packaging, is we want to be natural. And that's one of the reasons we switched to cans. And like, you were noticing the tops here. We don't use.
Yeah, these are made from recycled material.
We don't use what they call the turtle killers.
Oh, right. I hate those.
Yeah, if you're in Alabama, you know about that. And
Gulf
states.
Up in this area, at least, though, not too many people use those anymore. It's really starting to fall out of fashion. Everyone is going towards this style or something similar to these.
And even this is recyclable, but I'd love to find something better than that. Somebody did send me some kind of thing that was like cardboard or something.
Yeah, I even think I saw a video where it was like there was this it was in India, I believe, where they had like I can't really think of what it was, but it was like leftover from when they were making like oatmeal and stuff like that. They would like compress the byproducts into like spoons that they could then eat. And then they had another one where they had pressed them into the actual the can tabs or can rings, and then they threw it in the ocean, and like the turtles started eating it because it was just completely edible.
Oh, that's it. Wow, yeah, that's really
But
cool.
in all honesty, they'll probably have something with hemp in like 5 years, because I mean that's like highly biodegradable, definitely edible, and a lot harder than plastic as far as tensile strength goes.
We live right on the border of an area called the Black Dirt region, which is going absolutely crazy with hemp.
Oh,
right
yeah,
now.
I bet it is.
They used to grow onions and things like this,
Nope,
and
not anymore.
And now they're going crazy with hemp. And, of course, I don't know if you've heard up here in New York State, they've just legalized pot growing.
Yeah. So I thought that was just New York City, but it's the state itself.
Yeah, it's the whole state. Yeah. It's been decriminalized. It hasn't, been legalized there, quote, yet. But
no,
I mean,
it's been legalized.
They
just don't have.
They don't have the regulations and everything.
It's legalized. That a local government agency to regulate the selling of it.
Yeah.
Technically.
Yeah, but for instance, there's an old prison just a mile from here that shut down years ago, and the town was like, "What the hell are we going to do with this?" And they decided to, quote, make a corporate park out of it. Nobody wanted to have anything to do with it. Well, now they're in talks with some company that makes cannabis to open up a processing facility that's going to employ
that is fantastic.
200 people, putting greenhouses and everything like this. And
that is amazing. It
all goes back to the hemp business. And,
I love everything about that.
Yeah.
Like I remember listening to a whole bunch of podcasts where they're like the very first people that need to have a hemp license in the state of New York is the people that were in prison for nonviolent drug offenses, because we're not going, no one's going to pretend that they legalized marijuana off of some moral high ground standing. They need the tax dollars. That is it.
They need the money.
That's the same reason that they've decriminalized or refused to prosecute any prostitution in New York City. They don't have the money for it.
Well, I guarantee you prostitution pays a lot better than
absolutely.
Waitress probably.
5 or 10 years, OnlyFans is going to be usurped by a prostitution version of DoorDash. Yeah. It's going to have your profile picture. It's like a 5'5", 300-pound dude Bobby wants to meet up. It's like Bobby's going to have to pay premium, and go ahead and send him a message.
I don't know who's going to pay top of market for me, so I'm not looking.
Honestly, you should start think about. I don't know if not in like a kind of an OnlyFans kind of aspect, but even like maternity pictures. Have you ever thought of renting out the property to people who want to take maternity pictures? Because I know apple orchards and hyper nature kind of stuff is really big, especially I would especially imagine up north, an hour from New York City, hour and a half from New York City.
Yeah, we actually get a lot of requests for that, and we don't do it because kind of goes back to refocusing on what works, and it's people coming and taking pictures all over the place is not conducive to selling wine and cider, which is
give them a corner, pretty up a corner, give them a corner. Money's a $20 bill is a $20 bill.
Yeah. They don't want to come and take their pictures in a corner. They want to take over the place. They want to ask you every favor in the world.
Yeah. Well, hell, get your social media manager to just you get one person one day. It's a super exorbitant. It's $300 for the day, and if someone wants to pay for that, then by all means have one dude that controls them and give them a $50 split.
Yeah,
maybe on days that we're closed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, even with farms down here, I don't know, especially because y'all probably, it's more that y'all industrialized sooner, because New York, the first thing to industrialize were the bigger cities. But so I'm pretty sure now y'all have industrialized, the farmers have been taken advantage of, and then it's progressed to such a point where the farmers fight back and then new laws are implemented to back up the farmers. Alabama's still in that kind of area where we're still taking advantage of the farmers. So, I mean, I would imagine that just y'all would have, even here, people have kind of they diversify as much as humanly possible, just because they're getting, they have a chicken house and they get 6 cents a pound for the chicken that they raise for the company. So is that just something that y'all have already done, and we need to trim the fat and all that and just stick to 5 or 6 things instead of 100 different things? Is that about what it's like?
Basically, yeah,
kind of. Yeah, we're trying to focus on trying to narrow our focus so that we can be a little bit more productive in smaller and not very productive in a wider variety of areas.
Okay. Because I mean, it's definitely a lot of people, and myself included, have definitely said from now on, it doesn't need to just be a 9-to-5 thing for your sole income. You need to have about 3 or 4 side gigs that pull in about $10,000 a piece on top of your 9-to-5. That's about where you need to be. But even with that, if you don't know what you're doing, you're gonna overextend yourself.
Yeah. Well, it's getting past my bedtime here in New York.
Absolutely. With the guys, it was fantastic talking to you. We're going to have you back on once everything opens up and everything's popping.
Yeah, thank you. This was fun.
We'll do it again in the fall, like you said, when we can send you some cider. And
Exactly. Oh, absolutely. I'm going to order a big old box, $50 worth of shipping, and we can just talk about the different types of cider. You can send me a can of everything, and I'll just run through it all and just be I like this better.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'd love to be back on.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having us. And
All right.
wish you the best of luck with your show and everything, and becoming a professional podcaster. And
Yes.
you know.
All right. Well, go ahead and tell everybody where to find y'all at.
applewoodwinery.com.
Yep, or
And-
Facebook, Applewood Winery, or Instagram at Applewood Winery.
All right. Fantastic. Thank y'all guys so much for coming on. We'll see y'all next time.
Thanks. It was
Thanks.
fun.
All right.